All right, welcome to 6G Agenda. I'm your host, Andrew, here again with my man, Justin Ward on the chords.
Yo.
And we talk about what they want. And this time we got our man, Ben, from the End of the World News, back again for the third time. Trifecta. And we're super excited to have you, man. Welcome back.
Hey, thank you for having me back. And you pointed out earlier, I seem to come on right after something major happens, and there's nothing different about this time either.
No, not at all. End of the World News, very fitting. It seems that we are in the end time. So you picked a great name, dude. I love it. And you're right on the head with the news shit. So
Hey, we're all trying to figure it out, and so are you, which is why you have this podcast. And I saw you on Nephilim Death Squad, definitely laying it down, and you can tell you have a firm grasp of what's going on. So
appreciate
cheers
that.
to you as well for fighting the good fight. I joked, it used to be when everybody else zigged, I would zag, but now
Mhm.
you have to wait for people to zig and zag because the zag is co-opt and just walk in a
Exactly.
straight line in spirit and truth. Yeah.
Wow, that was fire. And for those who know, they get it. Man, yeah, you're exactly right, dude. It's definitely, I was just talking to somebody the other day. Every psyop, let's call it, that has happened in the past few weeks. First of all, every other Wednesday, Odin's Day, right? There's been a shooting. So you had the trans shooter with the Catholic Church that writes 6 million wasn't enough, but then kills Catholics. So you have this thing where it could go either way, right? Left, right, whatever. Then you have the Charlie Kirk. At first, everybody's saying he's MAGA because he, dresses up with the Trump scenario, but he's actually a leftist, with the trans. So everybody's getting their own argument handed to them, like their own. It's you, no, it's you, right? It's your team, it's my team, okay. And then this ICE shooting, same exact thing on the last Wednesday, where he shoots detainees, but he writes he's against ICE. So again, you have people saying, is he carrying out his own due process, or he's against ICE? And that's exactly what you're pointing out there, and you're exactly right, man.
Yeah. And, I don't really buy any of the narratives because they only offer like earthly solutions or earthly answers.
Oh
And
yeah.
we always talk about that this is a spiritual battle. So where does all this stuff come from? And I believe everything we see within this, earthly realm of ours, it begins in the spiritual realm that we cannot see. And I think they then, they use demons. These fallen gods are cruising this realm, and they use demons to possess, these worldly governors, these bloodlines that go all the way back to Babylon and possibly some from even before the flood. Um, and they're just trying to wage war against all of humanity. And they're trying to get us to form groups, hate each other, fight over things that don't really matter. So we don't pay attention to what's really going on. And that's the technocratic agenda, right? That's the beast system that Peter Thiel is warning us about.
Oh yeah, he's
Yeah, it's
he's warning
crazy.
us. He's warning us, all right, for sure. It's funny. His seminar, we can get into it. It's about Psalm 17 is something that he mentions being a part of the seminar. And when you read it, you can go ahead and pull it up for reference. That is like, I'm pretty sure it's God saying that I am not of like stone or gold or your precious, the things you hold precious that are of the earth. I'm something else, right? And essentially, what he's doing is creating God out of those things, right? Metal, stone, all these things that he's, excited about because he thinks that, from what I've read at least, God had it wrong. And that he said he made us in our image, but actually, he had it backwards and we're going to make him in ours. And, or, I might have said that a little messed up, but you know what I'm saying. And so that's kind of what I've always been alluding to with the whole building this prison planet, and they're selling it as like this utopia world, this building a heaven, essentially playing God and building their own version of heaven. And I believe again, it's just it's a manipulation by the fallen to get us to build our own prison planet and hold us down here with them. And the people that take that, they're gonna get stuck here with them. And maybe that's what it was referencing in the prophecy, you know?
Yeah, not only are they building a prison planet for us to live on, and they're selling us it's going to be altruistic and we're going to live forever and there's going to be no more death and no more sickness. But what they're really trying to do, I mean, maybe this is part of it, is I think their ultimate goal is to replace God. And you kind of see this with the way that these tech oligarchs talk about AI as it's this digital god that they're creating. At some point, they want to create sentient. Now, do they have that already? I don't know. Just look at the Minority Report, and they're kind of, showing us that thing. But when you combine that with this tech, this wearable tech, this implanted tech, where they want to hook us up to this digital God, this all knowing being that we can then get answers to all the questions in the world. You see what they're really doing is they're replicating the Holy Spirit. Now, if you're familiar with Scripture, they call the Holy Spirit. I think we can all, regardless of what your spiritual beliefs are, if you do believe in a God, I think we can agree that maybe this God has a spirit and that spirit lives within each one of us. And that spirit's actually referred to the spirit of truth, right? That's where we get this knowing from. So you could see how they're actually trying to replace the actual spirit of God with this digital God. And one more thing I'd like to say, which is also interesting. A couple months back, Elon Musk comes out with this digital companion named Annie, and it's some perverted little anime doll with
Mm-hmm.
these,
Yeah.
voluptuous boobs and stuff like that. But what's interesting about it is he called it Annie and he spelled it Ani. And if you look up the Hebrew definition of Annie, it means I am. Well, where have you heard that before? Well, it's used in the
Mm.
Old Testament, it's used in the New Testament with a reference to God the Most High and Jesus. And if you think about it this way, the AI God created a companion who calls himself I am and sends him into the world. I mean, they literally try to mimic the true God, in my opinion, in every step that they do.
Oh, that 100% nailed it. I mean, you know what? Another quote that they take that from, or they take that from the Bible, but then they, use it and say, "I think, therefore I am." Right? And so again, that's that worship of the intellect, the Luciferian principles of, the apple, all the way back to the first lie. Right? You will become of God, eat from the apple. Right? And so whenever they're told, we just went over this. Whenever they're told, by God that you're going to die, surely die. I'm pretty sure he means you're going to die a spiritual death because you're going to fall into the ego where you use your ego over nature and use it to, create all the things we see in front of us. And I think it happened once and now here it is again, as we talked about. But what I worry about this time is they built it in a way where, yeah, I mean, we're going to have to live through some shit, man, to, you know what I mean? We're not going to see the happy end of it, you know?
Yeah, what's interesting is I almost think that all scientific revolutions have been inspired by the fallen. I think that
I'm with you. I'm
there's a
there.
reason why
Yep.
the Bible says we should hold our thoughts captive because we don't know who's planting those thoughts in us. It could be the Holy Spirit from the divine. It could be these fallen angels, these demonic presence. What was I forget what I was talking about. What we're talking. I thought I was going to say we were talking about putting thoughts in us.
Well,
Sorry, I'm lost.
I know we're talking about primordial, like knowing, right? And how they're trying to replicate that digitally. And I was gonna mention, primordial knowing is to them, enlightenment if you can
Oh,
achieve that. And you're right, yeah.
I know where I was going with it. So back to the idea that all, science or technological revelations are inspired by the fallen. Just
Oh
take
yeah.
Sir Isaac Newton, who they credit to, finding out gravity. Well, what's the story there? An apple hits him in the head, and all of a
Mm-hmm.
sudden he has this knowledge, right?
Mm-hmm.
That goes back to Genesis, with the knowledge of good and evil and the eating of that apple. So you can see how these occultists and these bloodlines, they actually incorporate that in all of their mythos across the board.
And there's symbology for you, for our listeners there. That this is to open your mind up to symbologies to understand that when you hear a story like that and take it face value, like the apple falls on my head, and then you think, oh yeah, he just got knocked upside the head. Dude just figured it out. No, there's symbology within that. There's an esoteric meaning and an exoteric, and they work within the esoteric most of the time. Now, there's in the Freemasonic Encyclopedia, they say that hoodwinked, let me pull this out because I don't want to butcher the definition.
Mhm.
Hoodwinked is whenever, one second. Hoodwink is a symbol of the secrecy, silence, and darkness in which the mystery of our art shall be preserved from the unhallowed gaze of the profane. So, in other words, they use symbolism. And remember the cartoon movie Hoodwink, and it was all about
Mhm.
like the different fairy tales that we were told as a kid.
Mhm.
Those fairy tales have deep esoteric symbology hidden within him. Think about Hercules and Persephone and how he gets her from Hades and everything. That's a deep. These are all go back to deep symbolic stories that really have nothing to do with the characters themselves, but the actual heroic journey and what it means deep within that is your pursuit of enlightenment, intellect, the worship of the Luciferic principles of the Kundalini, call it whatever you want. It's all over the world.
Yeah, it's also interesting to see with this, high impact event of the Charlie Kirk assassination. They're letting you know exactly what's happening. I mean, within days, Candace Owens released a video where she calls herself a Mason of Turning Points.
Mm-hmm.
At the Charlie Kirk Memorial Extravaganza slash, parade. I don't know what that
Yeah.
was. Donald Trump called Charlie Kirk a master builder.
Yes, he did.
What's also interesting is when you dive into Charlie Kirk's wife, and she's
Oh
wearing
yeah.
that Knights of Malta cross. And we can get into that. I found some very interesting connections with the Knights of Malta, the Jesuits, the Basque, and the Nephilim. If you ever
Oh
heard of
yeah.
the Basque region,
I have
it's
not. No, that's where my gap is in between
so
that
you
and the
want to hear this real
Nephilim.
quick? This is
Go
really
go ahead,
interesting.
please. Yeah.
So the Knights of Malta were an order, kind of like the Knights Templar.
Mm-hmm.
Now, according to public information, it was established in the year around like 1048, I think, and it was a hospital in Jerusalem, but it quickly became a military order, in fact, a sovereign military order. And they got their names when they occupied Malta and built a naval base there to fight the Ottomans. And historically, it's been of all noble bloodlines. So we're talking about you have like the Borgheses and all the black nobility. You have the Bourbons from France that moved to Sicily. And it was a Catholic organization, but they hold some real power. I think it's interesting that they got rid of the Knights Templars, but the Knights of Malta still exist. And, anyways, in 2022, I believe, Pope Francis, they changed the bylaws so that the highest position within it, the Grand Master within the Knights of Malta, no longer had to have nobility bloodline. And they put in a Jesuit stooge to run it. So you might ask yourself, well, why do the Jesuits stand to benefit? And trust me, when I talk about it, it's all the bloodlines, right? I'm just talking about one in particular. How did the
Mm-hmm.
Jesuits stand to benefit from taking over, Turning Point USA from the evangelical, control, Zionist control? Well, they're going to play a major role, at least the Jesuits are, in ushering in the mystery Babylon religion. And that's
I'm
when
with
these
you.
gods come back and get us to worship them. I mean, there's already articles in the past about, how Pope Francis would baptize the Martians that came and visited.
Mm.
Um,
Wow.
and I think this is a smokescreen. He knows exactly who they are. You just look at that one picture, and you can look this up where he actually has an image of a green alien, which is the same, image of those lines in Peru, I believe, that were left from when the fallen
Oh
gods
yeah,
came
yeah.
down.
Mm-hmm.
So they pretend to, to act like these people are, aliens or whatever, but they know exactly who they are and they pay homage to them. And I think they're going to usher in this Babylon religion that after, because I think they're going to scapegoat the Abrahamic faith through all of this
Yes,
to
sir.
usher in this.
I agree with you. And the way you do that, which is we've been seeing unfold in front of us. And I want to get back to the Kirk thing too with the Freemasonic symbology within it, because there is a lot like weird shit with that as well to kind of add to that. But the Jesuits, I believe, had a hand in creating the radical Islam, Islam, right? And so when you take that and then that Islam and Muslim and everything was kind of put out there, like Christians and Muslims fight with each other because radical Islam has been created to, create terrorists, but that's been done by people who I believe, intelligence, call it whatever you want, that doesn't matter. But they did this so they could pin that, Muslim and Christian against each other so they wouldn't look around to see the Babylonian God worshippers that are actually controlling and manipulating those two against each other. And I think that, it's happening pretty prevalent now more than ever. And it's obvious now more than ever. But the Two Babylons, the book that was made called The Two Babylons, it expresses how the Catholic Church did it is the second Babylon. And so you're exactly right. They use uh, Zionists almost as a scapegoat outwardly, even though they really are doing what they're doing.
Well, they're,
Controlled
they're
at the
saving the
top,
same
I still
masters.
think. The Anglo-American,
Yeah.
the nobility bloodlines, all those that you're talking about as well. And so it's funny because I think we're going to see, because how many times have Jews been kicked out of countries over the years? How many times has it been manipulated by these same bloodlines and
Yeah.
manipulating all of the, you see what I mean?
Oh, without a
That's kind
doubt.
of what I'm seeing, you know?
And I'll tell you one thing. It's when I talk about intelligence, when I talk about bloodlines and whether they make up, the ones who control Israel, the ones that control the West, the ones that control Asia, they all go back to Deuteronomy 32, when God created the nations. And they all kind of work together. And I believe they're all descendants of these fallen. And this is why I was going to go with that one point I kind of forgot in the middle of it. The person who started the Jesuits, Sir Ignatius Loyola, right?
Hmm.
If you look up his history, he's actually from the Basque region. Now, the Basque region, or the Basquian people, are different than their neighboring people within Spain. They have way more, I think, blood type O and Rh negative. They have a completely different language that scholars predate. Say they take back all the way back. I mean, to Babel is one of the scholars.
Right.
Another scholar said that they go back to Stonehenge. Another within their mythos, right? You got to understand before these people across the West converted to Catholicism, they worshiped the gods. And within their mythos, they took them back to Atlantis. And
Hmm.
this is all ways to describe the days of Noah, which is when these fallen gods came down here, mated with women, and created these bloodlines. Now, I think there was a second incursion at Babel, but you can see how you know, behind the scenes, why they pretend to be Christian or they pretend to be Jewish or they pretend to be Muslim. They are nothing of the sort. And they worship the same gods. I know I just always like to point to one picture of Pope Benedict. Because I think if, as conspiracy theorists, when we look into the Star of David, we say it's the Star of Remphan, right?
Hmm.
There's no actual biblical description for that star except for Remphan. And it's also a magic sigil, which is why you find it all throughout the world from all these different cultures. And there's a picture of Pope Benedict, right, who's supposedly the head of the Catholic Church, separate, of that. But he has that star right on one of his big, stupid fish hats, Dogon
Hmm.
hats. And, they all worship these same fallen gods.
That, and he has on his robe, there it is. And on his robe, he had, and look at that, look at that, look at that Knights of Malta cross on him, or
Mhm.
Templar cross. And again, he also has that alien looking thing that was put on the ground. That, you remember, in the middle, it almost is like where the buttons go on most people's shirts, and it's
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
middle.
Just type in Green Alien. It's crazy.
Yeah. And that, like you're saying, I mean, that does show that Atlantean one world religion that went on back in Babylon, that they still worship today. And that's why it matters in this conversation, because who really runs this, and whether you believe in, Abrahamic faith or whatever or not, it really has nothing to do with it, because they're using it to essentially destroy the world and create a hell on earth.
Yeah, you know what I find interesting, and like I started believing in God. I had a relationship with God. I was saved by God's grace before I ever read the Bible. In fact, I looked up different spiritual beliefs before that because I was real hesitant to the Bible. But
Hmm.
one of the things that really made me settle on that book, and I'm not talking about the church, as you know, we're talking about the Catholic Church or any institution with four
Right,
walls that
right.
claims to represent God or solely represent God. I don't trust. Our bodies are the temples where the Holy Spirit resides.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, these guys, they don't serve the Most High God, and they're just hiding it.
Oh, and the true Israel and Jerusalem is within the body, the temple,
Yeah,
right?
right.
And so by literalizing the Bible and saying Israel as an actual nation, whenever, just like they did with Islam and jihad. Jihad was the purging of one's carnal nature that you're born with, the problems that you have, like towards temptation. That
Yeah,
is what that meant before it was kind of literalized and perverted the way that they've done with everything. And
yeah.
I believe, this is not really a take most people have, but I believe, or maybe they do, I believe that evangelical Christians are really equal to radical Islamists. They do less bombings, sure, but they're exactly the same because they're literalizing a thing and then oppressing and just looking the other way while people are being murdered because of that teaching.
Well,
And so equal to me.
Well, you named it, and this is all about fulfilling this prophecy and scapegoating the Zionist Jews. And not all Jews are Zionists. You know, I don't support anything that the government of Israel is doing or Netanyahu is doing. But to your point, you know, the critique is all Israel, 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 Zionist
Mm-hmm.
Jew, Zionist Jew, 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 Jew. Where do you think they get all their funding from?
Exactly. The
Where,
Vatican.
where?
Yes. Yeah.
From the evangelical right here,
Yep.
all the politicians,
I mean, yeah,
right? They're
they get,
all
yeah.
evangelical Zionists. And that's the thing. We want to apply a hierarchy to it
Mm-hmm.
because we want a boogeyman. But in all actuality, I think they all work together. Now, they are, you know, jockeying for position, for a bigger, you know, slice of the pie, more controlling, you know, and they have their own little tricks, you know, Western Freemasonry through Eastern Freemasonry, which is kind of what you saw with the Bolshevik Revolution. Like, make no
Mm-hmm.
mistake that the Russians were Masons as well, and they were serving the gods of old. And they were just battle between them. But ultimately, I think they all serve the greater agenda. And I guess one of the things why I really believed in the Bible is that all these bloodlines that we're talking about, you know who they worship? The rebellious angels, right?
Mm-hmm.
They worship the watchers who are
Yep.
fighting against, you know, the God of the Old Testament. And I just,
And
you
that's what
know,
they
those
pointed out
guys
in the.
at Bohemian Grove, they don't
Mm-hmm.
get together one time a week to do mock sacrifices to some bird god because they're trying to be edgelords.
Right. No, 100%.
But I
And
also think that's all been manipulated too through the institutions and things like that. I'm with you 100%.
oh yeah, it is. Yeah. Hey, Justin, why don't you pull up that Instagram video real quick while we're on the topic? Because that is kind of perfect. I mean, dude, this was known. I mean, this is it. No, it was happening before this, but this is just crazy that we're just now kind of finding out what we are when there was a guy like this. Check it out.
This is my wife, Lynn. Today, a foreign government, Israel, operates the most powerful lobby in Congress. This is AIPAC, the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. Through control of Congress, Israel demands and gets nearly $5 billion annually. No elected official dares criticize Israel for fear the Jewish lobby will accuse him of anti-Semitism, the kiss of death for any politician. The president also knows what Israel wants, Israel gets. To act otherwise is political suicide. The mass media, founded and controlled primarily by Jews, manipulates the spigot of information out of which heartland
All right,
America
you can pause it. You
drinks.
can pause it. Now, they created a specialized class of people so that way they could then use it so we can't criticize Israel. We have to funnel $5 billion, which is way more now, by the way. I mean, $5 billion in 1987 was way more, I mean, that's a lot of fucking money, dude. That's like equal to hundreds of billions now, right? A year. And so the Jew thing, I think, how do you vet them all? That's kind of what I mentioned. Like whenever all the tech lords that own everything, Oracle, Larry Ellison, who has the cloud that literally is what Palantir uses. So technically Oracle has more power than Palantir. I mean, they have the cloud system that generates for Palantir. They deal with OpenAI. The guy just had his son buy Paramount CBS. He just bought TikTok with Mark Andreessen. The guy owns everything. And then how do you vet these guys? Like a Sam Altman who says, I'm a Jew, but I don't practice Judaism. These are
Yeah,
the atheists. These are the ones I'm talking about, just like you're saying.
let
These
me
guys
tell you
don't
something.
practice it.
Yeah, let me tell you something. Now, I am half Jewish and I'm proud to be half
Me
Jewish. I
too.
have
My
nothing to do
mother's
with
side
Israel,
is. Yeah,
right?
my mother's side
And
is. Exactly.
I joke, I now know what it must have been like to be Catholic when their whole, you know, raping little boys thing came out. And I was the
Yeah.
one pointing the fingers at him too. I'm like, you had to have known, you are blah, 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 blah. Boy, was I wrong.
Right.
Um, and I now know what it feels like to be that because I don't support that anything that these people are doing. And, you know, they're atheists, right?
They are. And they don't
And they're
practice
using it to
or
hide behind it too.
they don't practice or they practice the literal version, which is just geopolitical jockeying, like you said, which is what we see today. I mean, a lot of like people like Ted Cruz, right, from Texas. I mean, this guy doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about out of the Bible. He's just saying it because he knows he's supposed to. So it's you either have that or you have the atheists like that. Honestly, I argue that they're almost worse because they're probably the ones actually worshiping the fallen angels you're talking about. Because atheism is just a easy out for saying I
Oh, they
worship
worship the
some
fallen.
fucking dark shit. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I
Very,
mean,
very crazy.
they know where their inspiration comes from. right? They know where, there's a reason why a lot of these technocrats are what's it called? They practice theosophy or
Mm-hmm.
Kabbalah or, any type of mysticism, because that's all that knowledge, that gnosis that they are, I think they're channeling these things from these fallen gods, if you ask
100%.
me. Did I ever tell you the story about Seymour Gray, the
Yeah,
Godfather?
yeah. We're gonna say it again though, because I want them to hear just in case they missed it. But real quick, that guy's name was Ted Pike. He's
Hmm?
outing Zionism, right? And Albert Pike was a huge Kabbalistic Zionist, right? So it's just very funny
Are
to
they
me that
related to each other?
no, and I looked it up, and I was like, how ironic though that the guys got the same last name, man. That's just very funny.
Yeah. No, I mean, they
But yeah,
might be
tell me about
related to each other.
Seymour
So
Hoffman, because you
Seymour
did
Cray is interesting. He's the
or crazy, yeah.
godfather of supercomputing. Essentially, what he did, or his work did, he took those giant IBM computers that used to take up the whole room, and through his engineering work, he kind of led the way to the personal computer. And he's known for saying this, and he said this multiple times. Whenever he had a problem that he couldn't solve, he would go down into basically a cave that he had built in his cellar, and he'd start digging and digging and digging, and the elves would come out and they would give him the answers. Well, where have you heard elves used before? Well, in folklore, right? They're kind of their version of angels. You've heard it in the
Mm-hmm.
DMT world with the machine elves,
Mm-hmm. And
and
you've also
I
heard it
think,
with the low frequencies.
yeah. And if you look at the name of a lot of the science stuff, it's named after
Hmm.
Greek gods. There's a
Exactly.
reason why in the middle of CERN they have a statue of Shiva the Destroyer,
Hmm.
one of these gods within the Hindu pantheon.
We just did
Um,
an episode on CERN yesterday on our Patreon, where we talked about, the opening of Angels and Demons was a guy who worked for CERN getting killed, right? And it, and the whole thing is like they made the God particle. They had the whole ceremony with the angels and demons out in real life doing mock sacrifices, as you mentioned, very Bohemian Grove-esque. And then you have that lady Astrid Stuckelberger, who is a whistleblower who says that they're peering into portals, they're speaking to entities that are coming through, and they created the World Wide Web, right? So whenever you think about all that, the internet, all the things we're talking about, it starts to make more sense in that light.
yeah, I
And
think
I'm
it's all
glad you brought up CERN for that reason, because
Well,
yeah.
I think it's all tied together, and I'll make 2 points. One, I think this technocratic surveillance state that they're going to build is going to combine like all three things. I think it's going to combine the quantum, it's going to combine wearable technology, and it's going to combine AI. And I think they're going to be using the quantum. I mean, Google has already created computer chips, they say, that work in the quantum. And the only way they can compute so fast, they say, is because they're actually, computing in another dimension. And I think
Oh
that they're
yeah, I
going to,
saw that.
right? So it's not, a coincidence that CERN, who is pushing quantum physics, also pushed the internet. I think they're going to combine them all three of them to actually roll out this out. But interesting about Shiva, the destroyer. Now, within the Hindu belief system, they believe history in terms of yuga cycles, right? So every 2,400 or 4,800 years is the ending of one yuga cycle and the beginning of a new one. So we're currently in the Kali Yuga. And according to them, that is a demon that is ruling over us. And if you Google this, many scholars believe the end of the current Kali Yuga is 2025. Now let's overlap that with biblical prophecy in the book of Revelations. That's the thing. These old cultures, they always confirm each other's beliefs, kinda.
Hmm.
Which tells me it happened. We just get a different take on it. And according to the book of Revelations, halfway through the last 7 years, these heavenly hosts or these fallen gods are given the keys to the abyss. Now, the abyss is a jail of such in the underworld, which is in another dimension. Now, when we know it, we understand about what CERN's doing, breaking into the other dimension. When you read Revelations, when they open up this abyss, these entities are released back onto the earth. You know who their leader is? Abaddon the Destroyer in Hebrew, or Apollyon the Destroyer in Greek. And I just asked myself, is Abaddon, Apollyon, and Shiva the same deity, just under a different name? And if they really are ripping into new dimensions, are they trying to break these guys out of some type of interdimensional jail
Oh yeah.
before the prescribed time?
That would make a lot of sense. You know, we brought up the fact that they're trying to create antimatter, dark matter, and probably to like you said earlier, to create a digital version, you know, a version in the material realm, their own version. And you got to study it to figure it out. You got to figure out the Big Bang and slam in the God particle and all those things if you want to recreate the structures of life and the structures of realms you can't even see, right? And so it adds right in with all the shit you're saying. You're exactly right. And by the way, speaking of elves, Curtis Yarvin, he's the guy who he calls himself the Dark Elf. And so he's the guy who Peter Thiel, you know, he fucking worships his ideologies, which is this idea of a CEO king, this patchwork, new technate kind of one world government where it's ran in patches. And if you don't like it, you can go fuck off, or you could be simulated and virtualized into a nice cocoon state. And so this guy calls himself the Dark Elf, right? And all these like you say high impact events that have been going on. You know, there's a guy who killed himself or who ended up writing on his gun whenever he went to kill people. I think it was Colorado, maybe. It was at an amusement park or something or somewhere, maybe a college. But either way, he wrote, "This is my dark elf." And these people are being mind controlled. These people are being fucked with, in my opinion. And so when you add all that in, like, you know, kind of makes sense.
Well, it's all together. I think accelerationism goes hand in hand with the Dark Enlightenment. And
Yes.
with this wave of shootings, and these people are all possessed by demons. I don't know if you saw that Catholic school shooter,
Mm-hmm.
his, portrait of him looking into a mirror with a demon god looking back at him.
Yep. And then the guy
Yeah.
on the train that says he had material inside of him, right? I mean, all these people seem to even say there's a guy who killed himself in the bathroom of an amusement park with all the equipment he needed to go shoot up the place. And he wrote on the wall, "I'm not a murderer." You see what I mean? That shit doesn't like something's happening, right?
Oh,
And
MK Ultra Manchurian Candidate. And I also remember listening to somebody on a podcast one time who claims that she was raised in this like sex cult, satanic sex cult, and she was groomed and MK Ultra and all that kind of stuff. And she said what she later found out while they were like, fracturing, messing with her brain and programming her, what they were doing is attaching entities to her. And I
mm,
think you might have that with these split personalities of Manchurian candidates and this compartmentalization of the brain. I think that might be a fancy way of saying attaching demons to these people
yes, sir.
and they activate. And the reason I talk about this is because, like I said, this is a spiritual war manifesting in our 3D reality. And it's important to understand the source of all that. And it's not humans, it's something unearthly.
Yes, sir. You know, it's funny. I just saw today, we made it on Doom Scroll, and I went with Sam Tripoli. I happened to be on Outside Minds, and I was talking about exactly what you're saying. How I'm starting to think because we're doing a silent weapons deep dive about MK Ultra and how it's manifested today, like ufology movement. I think has a lot to do with it. The Robertson panel was the same year. You also have the remote viewing documents and this idea of kind of leaving your body and shit like that. I think that that's almost to practice MK Ultraing yourself to disassociate your consciousness from your biology. And I said all that in a clip on there, and I just thought that was fucking dope. I was like, oh, cool,
Yeah.
because I want that shit to get out there because people, you get enticed, you think, oh, look at this, right? And then you end up, it's just crazy how deep the manipulation goes,
Yeah,
you know?
dude. It's crazy that, and I believe in seers. I think they're as old as time. I mean, all you have to do is read the Old Testament and the prophets, and there's people that can communicate with that spiritual realm. I think we still have that today. I
Hmm.
think the enemy knows it, and that's why they do a lot of this testing, right? Maybe that's why they're doing 23 with me or the gate program and all that type of stuff.
Yes.
They're looking for people with these spiritual gifts, and they're trying to weaponize them, not for good.
Yeah. No, 100%. Not even, part of it that we might get into is just this idea, are they making autistic people on purpose for
Oh,
that
the
reason?
telepathy tapes?
Right. It's like, what's going on? Is this being done on purpose that way you can tap into something or use them to tap? It's pretty much, it reminds me of, I don't remember. I think it was called, yeah, The Institute. It just came out recently, right? And the whole thing is they're like siphoning these kids for their spiritual, uh, they end up dying quickly because they use their spiritual, like what you said, seer powers and shit
Yeah.
so much that it ends up actually killing them. They're just sucking all the energy out of them, like parasitic shit. And that's kind of what I can see, kind of like the Matrix, where when you're plugged in and it's living off you as a battery, right? Same
Oh,
kind of
we
concept.
we definitely live in a multi-dimensional reality. And I thinking of the Matrix in a certain way. So I think we live in an organic simulation that was created by a creator. Um, I mean, personally, I don't think the Archons built it, but it's the same type of concept, right? But one's
Hmm.
organic. And I think that our bodies, in a sense, are kind of like these biological computers that house the spirit. And it uses our five senses to decode our reality or project our reality that we see. And I wonder if these children, and this is just based off my own experience, right? When you put you produce DMT at very low levels all throughout your life. And when you die, your brain gets flooded with it. And that's when the veil thins, right? And your spirit either lives your body or you can see other entities. And essentially, what you're doing with DMT is you're simulating a near death experience. And the same thing happens. So I wonder if a lot of these kids or adults at this point that have this gift, it has to do with their brain chemistry and their just ability to decode frequencies outside of this dimension and have visions with it. I think it's truly incredible, but I'm 100% believe that it's all real.
Yeah, dude, I could definitely see that shit, dude. Yeah, during our Silent Weapon series, we went into what was that? What was the last one we did? It was about, yeah, the Manchurian candidates. And, JFK had a hand in producing that. And it was a year before he died, right? So we're talking programmable patsies, right? Killers, whatever, that are being used through MK Ultra tactics. And again, to the Charlie Kirk thing, to get back to that, I mean, when you look at the layers that went on there, there is so many shooters that you could say, that guy could have been a shooter. Fuck, I don't know. I mean, look at that guy pulling on his shoulder. Look at this other guy moving his hands weird. And then this guy's sitting here with his fucking phone in between his arm and armpit, and then he puts it right in his pocket as soon as the shot goes off. And then you see a dude jump over a table and start handing shit off and grabbing other shit while the dude's on the ground and people are helping him. It's way too much going on.
It's
It's a
almost like they
layered
have two
operation.
patsies too. The guy on the roof, the guy that
Multiple.
they caught,
Yeah. So
it's
George
nuts.
Zinn, I think that they've been blackmailing that guy with child porn to get him to do the 9/11 thing, the bombing call in that he did. But this one, somebody really died and he was really there and maybe he knew more. I don't know. But they fucking took him in, I feel like, with the shit that they were blackmailing him with, to be honest. Now, I
The
do want to
bigger
get into the symbolic shit in a minute. Go ahead. What were
Yeah,
you going to
and you
say?
know what's even more of a head scratcher, and this has got to make you wonder about it all, is the Snake
Yeah.
Eyes movie.
Yeah. I was just looking into that a little bit deeper today. I mean, if you think, dude,
Dude, that
he,
is because
yeah.
what that implies, right? If all
Mm-hmm.
these things are correlated all the way back in 1998, Charlie Kirkland, the
Yeah.
politician who was shot in the neck at the same area, it was taking place at a boxing match, and the boxer's name was Tyler the Executioner. Who's the patsy? Tyler. It
Yep.
happened on September 10th, um, the same day that Charlie Kirk was assassinated. And if that's the case, and the evidence points, that it is, that means Charlie Kirk or this whole plan somehow was like
Mm-hmm.
created
So
somehow at the birth of that movie.
now that sounds crazy.
And that means Charlie somehow was part of
Mm-hmm.
it. And I kind of liken it to, and then we'll get into it. When they took out MLK. Now, most people can't stand it when I say this, but yeah, MLK was a patsy. His father was Prince Hall Freemasonry. He had a relationship with the Rothschilds, major backers of his. And I think they were using them to make the civil rights movement more peaceful because I think they understood if they followed Malcolm X, then the entire country would burn down, and rightfully so. So they stick in this patsy to manipulate the people to make it a peaceful transfer. And then what do? Well, you take them out, and that serves the
Mm-hmm.
greater agenda. I mean, think about how
Now the
that
guy that was the peaceful guy is the martyr, and you don't think about Malcolm X and the fact that he's dead anymore. You're thinking about the guy who, he
right?
got whites and blacks together, right? And that's what got him killed. That's what got him killed. They didn't want whites and blacks together. But
And what
yeah, I mean
is
that might be part of it, but
and what's Charlie Kirk doing? He's bringing the conservatives all together. I mean, some of the biggest people that are praying for Charlie and his family, and we should. And a week before, we're making texts about with Charlie with the yarmulke on, calling him a shill, and that he had sold out his entire life to the people who killed
uh-huh.
Jesus. A quote by Ian Carroll. Uh, you know,
Yeah. And dude,
And
that goes both ways. Laura Loomer was talking a lot of shit about Charlie Kirk, and then when he died, she said, that's it, gloves off. We need a civil war. I mean, that bitch is always calling for some crazy shit. Talking about Al Qaeda's, we're gonna have another 9/11 in about 6 months. Like she's putting a time on it. It's insane. But Charlie Kirk's dad was the architect for Trump Tower. And so this is like 10, 15 years before Charlie Kirk is, or before the movie comes out. Charlie Kirk was 31. I'm 29. So what? He was born in 94,
mhm.
93. So 10 years after Trump Tower is built, he's born. And then 5 years later, that movie comes out. I mean, I don't know. That'd be crazy I mean, it's not like
Dude, it's
it's
like
not
one big magic
plausible.
trick.
It's not like it's not plausible, but that is outrageous to
Oh, I think
think
it's
that
definitely
at
plausible that
five
they're
years old,
connected.
that
But did
Trump
you
was
ever look
meant
into
to.
the what's it called? I know you're bringing it up. Maybe you want to bring it up. Some of the things about Mrs. Kirk and her
Mhm.
family's affiliations.
Well, that as well, but also the last guy, right before I forget, the last
Yeah.
guy to talk to Charlie Kirk, he changes the subject to shootings, right? To talk about shootings, which is kind of weird because he gets shot right after that right? Which is ironic because then you get the news headings all about that. So the guy that asked him that question was named Hunter Kozak. The hunter of Kozak means free man. What does Charlie's name mean? Free man. Free man, and his last name means church. And
Oh yeah.
so yeah, so the last guy to talk to him was the hunter of the free man. I mean, how do you make this shit up? Not to mention the fact that the book that came out the day before, 999, if you put the 2025 together, came out the day before with Anastasia J. Casey. And I gotten into like looking into what names mean lately, and it's really been fruitful. So Anastasia means a martyr. It's a Christian Orthodox saint who is a martyr. Anastasia the martyr, right? J is for a pillar, right? He establishes. It's the J pillar. That's what that means. And
Hmm.
then Casey, brave, vigilant watcher, right? So the martyr establishes a brave, vigilant watcher, which I believe with the turning point, this what we're talking about, this police state, this new patchwork CEO, whatever you want to look at it, he was meant to die for the killing of the king ritual of changing of the age, right? And making manifest what is hidden. And that's what I think is what happened with JFK and now Kirk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, and they're manifesting the reality that they want. I mean, I just heard, Nick Fuentes on Harrison Smith's podcast on InfoWars, which, by the way, is an intelligence operation, calling for the federal government to come in here and solve the problem.
Yep.
Hegelian dialect, problem, reaction, solution.
Yes,
And they're
sir.
going to get it. And it's going to be a number of ways, whether that's, and I also find it interesting that with the whole ICE thing, they're almost kind of programming us to accept this new type of Gestapo police force. And they're first going to use it for, a reason people can support. But eventually, they're going to use it against us.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if you were on whenever the riots were going on in California, but that's exactly what I said. I said, you got to normalize the idea of martial law. They wanted more radical fucking, people going nuts, obviously. The protest didn't turn out the way they wanted, right? So then you have Charlie Kirk die, and then Pam Bondi tries the whole, hate speech isn't, there's free speech and then there's hate speech. And we'll come after you on both. And she says across the aisle. We'll come after you across the aisle. And that's what I'm trying to point out. I don't even think they care about going after right or left people. They're coming after motherfuckers like us, dude. Because
Oh,
people
yeah.
that actually are speaking and thinking critically, people that go along that are puppets on a string, anytime something happens, they just go along with the right or left. Those are what they want. They don't want people that are critically analyzing what's going on and trying to wake people up to it. And that's really that's what worries me a little bit about it, right? Is that I see what they're really coming after. And whenever you look over at the UK right now, the hate speech shit is out. I mean, people are getting arrested for, Facebook posts and whatnot. But check this out. Go ahead, pull it up. Uh, did you see that they're making it mandatory for a biometric ID to work?
In England, yeah, Keir Starmer just came out and said it. Yeah, play it.
Dude, this is crazy. Check this out.
And that is why today I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out.
It's free, right? It only costs you your human rights of freedom, right? But hey, it won't cost you $1. It's gonna help your pockets. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to worry about spending any money. That's all that matters.
But you
It's
know what?
crazy.
No one's talking about it either. And maybe that was all part of the plan too with this high impact event. And you know what I've come to realize? I don't know if I talked about it on here, but there's this thing called a sentient world simulation. And it was created in Purdue, but let's just face it, they get a lot of this stuff from like DARPA and the CIA. Just look
Mhm.
at the history of the company Oracle. Well, anyways, they've created a simulated reality and they've uploaded all the conditions of our earthly realm. So they really have a simulation of America, and some would suggest that they have avatars of each one of us. And this is where they
Yes.
run simulations through to test them, so they get the best possible outcome. So if you ever want to know why one of these high impact events is happening, just pay attention to the reactions. The reactions will tell you everything because
Hmm.
those reactions were intended, regardless of what they are. So what were
Yep.
the first two initial reaction? One, it was the official narrative, which it was
Epstein
this
or
guy that was, watched furry porn that killed Charlie for being a Christian.
hmm
And two, straight to Israel. And I'm not saying Israel didn't have ties to it. Like I said, when you talk about intelligence, it's one big monolith group. You're talking about these bloodlines. It's one group.
hmm
But to me, that was the point that they wanted to hit home because, we talked about this earlier, that falls within their greater scope or their greater agenda. And that is this fulfillment of prophecy, and this beast technocratic system falls right into play with it.
Oh yeah. And speaking of a beast, I'm sorry, not beast, but a digital avatar. That's exactly what they need in order to predictively police and thought police you to what like. They need the AI to be able to combine all the data to the point where they just know, right? Which we're almost there, and that's the point of us getting ChatGPT for free, so we could talk to it and it can understand people how they think, and that's why people are going through psychosis. Because what does it do? This is what I mentioned in my silent weapons thing.
Mm.
Flattery is the way you manipulate people, right? And so when you flatter somebody and make, oh, you're so special. Oh, you really know what you're talking about. And you just keep doing that, you're stroking them, but they go for it because they're thinking, well, this thing's smart. It's got all the information and it's telling me I know what I'm fucking on it, you know? And so it's very easy to see that that's what it is, right? And I have this thing that I'm getting into. I really want to read this to you because I feel like you'll
Read it.
like it. This is off the same thing from the Hoodwink. So, who is the modern man? A mind numbed patsy, ignorant, apathetic, getting marching orders from the Twilight language keywords sprinkled in his news and current events, essentially provoked by buzzwords. He stops with great derision at the idea of the existence of an operation of mass mind control emanating from the media and government because he believes that he is way too smart to believe in the supernatural, right? He's all pumped up on this idea that he is the crown of creation. And this makes man the ideal subject. Denying power of hypnosis control even as his head bobs on a string. That's what we're talking about right now, dude. That's what we're talking about. That's what we see every day, man. And that's the shit. It's hard to get people to critically think when you've been uh enticed or incentivized to stop doing it, right? People don't like thinking. People get mad when you talk about this stuff because they have to think.
No, I'm with you. And the way this information war is going, I always joke we live in a world of ops, bots, and psyops. And I say they're all ops.
Yeah.
And they can be ops without knowing they're ops. And you can thank the algorithm for that. Right. So here you have these people that might not be, financially tied to the system, not necessarily trying to deceive humanity. But this algorithm can take bad opinions and they can
Mm-hmm.
pump it or they can not pump it, and they can really curate or manifest the reality that they want. So in this information war, they've made us both the victims and the perpetrators of their propaganda all through technology.
Yes, sir. And speaking of InfoWars and Nick Fuentes, I think that he was always anti-Israel. I think that he was shadow banned for a long time. Why he stayed on Rumble, I get it. He built a following that way, and then they inorganically pumped him whenever being anti-Zionist was cool, right? And now Charlie Kirk's dead. He gets the call, and he's like, "Uh oh, okay, I gotta back up because I got 1 million followers, and they don't want me fucking talking about this anymore. So I'm gonna
Mm.
listen." That's kind of the way I see it. I don't know. I mean, I can't see it
So
any other
you
way.
think he got the call? See, I think Nick's always
I don't
been on it
know.
though.
It's a theoretical part for me, but I mean, I
Yeah,
really do
yeah.
think he's
See,
one of, no, I think he's one of those characters you were just mentioning that inorganically got pumped up after being shadow banned, and now he might be contrived. That's kind of how I
well,
see
just look
him
at
at the moment.
so with Nick is I don't really pay attention too much to what he's been doing over the last 3 years or whatever. Just look at who he associated with during his MAGA years when he was actually supporting MAGA. I mean, he was tied to the entire machine, whether it was
Mm.
InfoWars with Alex Jones, he was, palling around with that guy Ali, who later came out to be a sexual predator. Uh, you know, Nick definitely, I'm not saying I know exactly what's going on in that guy's personal life, but I've been around the block once or a few times, and there's
I mean, he
something,
laughed.
there's
No,
something
I'm sorry.
blackmailable about his, professional life. So, and like I said, I think it's just controlled opposition. Who's funding him? I don't know. Who's making all those super chats? I don't know. But what I do know is the agenda or what he is saying, falls hand in hand with this fulfillment of prophecy.
Yes, sir.
Regardless of which way you look at it. And like I said, we're talking about it, right? We are talking about, Israel's control. We're talking about Mossad, but we're talking about it in the nuance that it requires without furthering the agenda, which is tribalism, which is, kicking all the Jews out to go back to Israel, which is, once again, a fulfillment of prophecy, right? It's crazy how they turn us into these agents and we might not even realize it.
I know, and that's why we walk a very fine line when we talk about this. We like to differentiate what we're talking about. We're talking about atheist Jews, people that don't practice the Torah, people that say that they are all for Israel and only care about Jews and Zionists, but they don't do anything that has to do with being a real, practicing Jew. But also outside of that, earlier you mentioned the Internet of Things and all that shit. So I saw something today that kind of fucked me up, and I figured it kind of goes with that. So I want to see what you thought.
Hmm.
In 2014, researchers rolled out the idea of a hunter-prey model, where mobile robots could hunt down people by locking onto the wireless signals from their body-worn health sensors. WBANS, that's what they're called. Okay, so the study showed how these hunters could trail patients, athletes, or soldiers to keep their vital data streaming in real time. In other words, since 2014, the tech world has been exploring how to track people through their own wearable networks, basically enabling them to hunt the prey with always on surveillance. It gets real
It,
deep into like how it works and what they do, but again, the Internet of Things, Internet of Bodies, they're building it and they're creating nanotechnology, nanobots, graphene oxide, any way they could program your DNA and your genetic makeup to be able to be more cohesive for this technology to integrate with you.
Yeah, to play off that, everybody was like, "Oh, we're winning, we're winning." Trump said, "Don't take any Tylenol," and that we have to take this certain type of chemical out of the vaccines. But what's he going to replace it with? Well, he's going to replace it with these new vaccines that don't have that chemical. Oh, but by the way, they're alter your DNA, right? They're going to
Mhm.
have that mRNA technology, and you actually find this mRNA technology not just in vaccines, but across all medicines moving forward. They're starting to really incorporate it, whether it's cancer treatments. Um, I mean, I don't know if this is real, but I even saw a video of they took this dental medicine and they put it underneath the microphone and saw that they had these nanobots in it and they
Mm.
injected it with nicotine and it made all the nanobots like disappear and all that type of stuff. So,
Wow.
across the board, and they're going to disguise it as, it's not the old medicine, right? That's not killing it. It's just new medicine. And that's going to set your body up to, I mean, who knows how it's going to look? The new wearable tech. Like I said, maybe that brain chip is old school, right? And they're just
Right.
selling us on that idea. Who
Oh yeah, they don't
knows?
need. Yep, yep.
Who
I'm
knows what
with you
they're really
there.
doing behind closed doors and how much they're implementing it without our acknowledgement.
Yeah, I mean that's something that Astrid Steckelberger, she's a doctor PhD for epidemiology. I mean, she was deep into biotech research, the whole deal, and that got me a little skeptical. But then she starts talking about how they have 5G technology and graphene oxide and shit like that going into the vaccines because the UN and these global organizations, ever since COVID especially, have special privileges now. Because of the emergency powers that they got, and they never released them. And now we're in that totalitarian tiptoe where they have the control. They're kind of completing the system, and then we're there, you know?
And what's interesting, I mean, I was listening to this one guy, I believe his name's Andrew Kim. I know his name's Andrew, spelt weird. I don't know if it's Kim, but he is one of these new AI hotshots whose company was just acquired by Meta, and he's brought onto their super intelligence team. And I was watching him interviewing, and he's a young guy, and he was making the case that he was going to wait to have kids so they could work all the bugs out of this, wearable tech to hook us up to the internet. And he made an interesting observation. He said the generations to come that are born into this world will come in born with their DNA already altered. And then he compared that different to the ones that actually put in the implants, right? So he was making the case that he wants to wait for the implants to, work out
Mm-hmm.
all the bugs, implying that those implants, they might tell you it's for, altruistic ideas, but at a cellular level are going to change your DNA to the point where you are going to pass that on to future generations.
Oh yeah, that's the point of CRISPR and gene driving. And I got real worried whenever I started hearing about gene driving and how they're like, well, we want it to go, past the next generation, the next generation. And I'm like, whoa, we don't even know if this shit works yet. And you're already working on like making sure that it's permanent for multiple generations. That sounds pretty fucking psychotic, you know? And I've been seeing things about them putting it into pesticide shit, and also like with all the vaccines that they're doing for animals that you eat from factory farm, grocery stores are going to have it. So it is going to get to a point where you cannot avoid it, and you are going to, without knowing it, just, I mean, unless you look into it, like like we're talking about. But then still, how do you avoid it, right?
So
How do you
I'm
how do
with you.
you
I'll tell you how. And this is, the supernatural woo woo in me.
uh-huh.
Um, have you ever seen those Japanese water experiments
Yeah, with the cymatics.
where they write like good things on some
Oh
water
yeah.
jars and bad things on other water jars and then they freeze it?
Mm-hmm.
And there was one of them where they took, two samples from the same polluted water source and they prayed over one of them and they didn't pray over the other one. And to watch the difference in these two
Mm-hmm.
crystalline structures was incredible. And I do think there's a power in prayer. There's a power in spirit if we ask upon that can actually change molecular structure of things. So, but to your point, I don't think there's any escaping it, right? I think that's our best bet because at every single level, whether it's the food, whether it's the air, whether it's the water, whether it's the pharmaceuticals, they're making an all-out press to change our genetic makeup, to change the chemical composition in our head, just so we're not operating the way that God intended it.
For sure, man. And I always, it's funny you brought that up. In the past few weeks, I actually started to put intention into water before I drink it. If that's kind of the way I would word it. I kind of put like intention, into it,
Yeah.
which is the same as praying. I mean, it really is.
Yeah, same
Uh,
thing. Yeah.
and also, like, I wonder, I thought that they had proven that prayer does have, like, they had measured it somehow. I could have swore there was some weird shit where they figured it, like some people prayed and then it worked. I don't know. Maybe I'm tripping. Justin, do you think you could find that? If they figure out if any praying has been proven, that'd be
Well, I mean,
sick.
what's interesting is just think about the livestock that we eat, right? So when they're raising these cows and they're just feeding them gross stuff, they're not letting them move. Maybe they're sticking metaverse goggles on them. Have you ever seen those pictures where they stick the metaverse goggles on them? Uh,
No,
oh yeah, there's actual pictures of cow farms where they actually are putting metaverse goggles on them. Oh, it's absolutely insane. But
really?
just, to the point is, think about how much negative energy is stored up in that animal by the time you eat it, all the way from the way they raise it to the way that they kill it and all that type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to the point is, maybe there's a reason why in the Old Testament there's a proper way to sacrifice an animal before you eat it. There was a proper way to kill it. There's a proper way to raise it, and I think it's to get out all the impurities of it because it's just gross. Everything we're putting in our body.
Well, I mean, think about how expensive it is for the meat that's massaged, right? They massage the cow, and you pay like $20 fucking pound for some, wagyu or whatever it is that has been treated properly, right? And that kind of gets back to what we talked about in the beginning, where don't eat of the apple of knowledge or you will surely, because we became parasitic upon the earth. We didn't live one with nature as God intended. We chose to, exert our ego over everything and just overuse, right? To the point where things became imbalanced, and there probably was a natural cataclysm caused by, God, but also by us because of what we did, right? And so it's the same thing, whichever way you want to look at it. And that's why it's funny because they'll use that type of shit to prove that, oh, they're just talking about cataclysms. It's like, well, yeah, but how the fuck do you think he did it? You know what I mean? You think he just came down and just said, here's some water, I'm going to flood you. No, he did some shit that you would do, right? Like a force, a godly
Hey,
force, an ungodly
technology.
force. Exactly. Yeah,
Hey,
that too.
there's see, I think there's evidence of weather manipulation from these fallen gods in the Bible. So in the book of Job, Satan's cruising the earth and he sees Job and he goes up to the heavens and God goes, "Have you seen my servant Job? He's the most righteous man on earth. He's never cursed me to his face," right? And the Satan goes, "Well, he only says that because you've put a hedge around him, you protect him, and you've blessed him." He said, "Take all those things away and see if he doesn't curse you to your face." Well, God goes, "Okay." Well, anyways, he goes down there. There's a fire that destroys Job's farm. The Chaldeans come in there and kill Job's family. But what I found interesting is that it says, "And there was a mighty whirlwind," right? We're talking about a big windstorm that destroyed some part of Job's farm. And you're thinking to yourself, well, if that didn't come from God Most High in the Bible, and this was a result of, Satan or the Satans, right? It could have been a number of adversaries um, making this happen, right? There's a reason why these native tribes that were polytheists would worship their rain gods, right? Because I think
Hmm.
behind the scenes, they're actually doing that stuff. And just go to the cover of The Economist, what is
Hmm.
titled "A Roadmap to Hell," I believe it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And what is Satan standing next to? A climate machine, right?
Holy
So,
shit, you're right. He's got his lever on the machine for the weather.
yeah,
Hey, could you The Economist, Roadmap to Hell, Justin, sorry. Yeah, dude, I was just looking at that the other day because they had Hamas and Israel fighting, which
yeah, on the,
I mean, they've been occupied since the 60s. I mean, you could
yeah.
argue, I mean, it's
But
not
that's
like it's
really
that
what kicked off, and so as you know, I believe, yeah, pull that up. It's crazy. Like it's talked about Obama being gay on that thing, um,
new.
way before it
Yeah,
came out. There's so
he's probably
many,
gonna have to cut it and zoom on it, but
yeah,
yeah, he'll probably have to like cut it and zoom on it. But I wish you had yeah, there you go. Bet. Yeah, because there's so much shit going on in the picture too. It's like
oh yeah,
kind of a bitch. Hopefully,
it's
if you
absolutely
watch it,
wild.
if you're not watching the video, it's a magazine called The Economist. I'm sure you've heard it. It's called A Rough Guide to Hell. What year was this? Like 2012?
Yeah, LA
Well,
2012. And see, to me, when I
yeah,
look at this,
which makes sense because that was the year that, right? It's
this is a
supposed to
more
everything.
accurate description of how the world really works, right? It's all these different world leaders who look like they oppose each other, but who are they
Yeah,
all under control of in this picture?
Satan.
Satan, right?
Mm-hmm. That's 100%, dude. That's so crazy, man.
It's
Yeah, at the
nuts,
end of the
right?
day, yeah, they're earthly, earthly carnal natures. Do as thou wilt. You know what I mean? That's what that comes from. Is the opposite of a spiritual jihad, right? Instead, they chose to literalize the spiritual jihad into terrorism. That's the type of shit we're working with, right? Where they take something that's supposed to mean purging of the soul to make yourself good, and then they say, no, 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 we're gonna make that, people that you actually need to go kill because they don't believe in your God, which
Oh, it's
is
crazy what they do. Have you seen that new show on Apple called God of War?
no. Is that about the game or just something different?
No, so it's about these Polynesian tribes in Hawaii, and they're going to battle with each other. And each one of them has a different god, and they
Mm,
get their instructions from their gods on what to do, whether to wage war or not. And a lot of times they take these psychedelics and maybe their version of DMT to communicate with these gods before they go into war, and that's where they get their instructions. And I believe this to be true. I believe this is how the world is operated. I think you both have the Old Testament and you have the various pantheon beliefs that confirm this. And they're basically waging war against us through this physical war, getting us to kill each other, all that type of stuff for their own amusement, essentially. I think they're up there laughing and they're pulling the strings. And yeah, it's truly wild.
Oh, it is, dude. I mean, the Vikings did that. They would take mushrooms and then go just annihilate people. Could you imagine being on mushrooms, like something that's supposed to be a nice spiritual, ascent, and then instead you're just the most gory bloodbath you could imagine. The worst gruesome things is what they decided to partake in on that instead. That's equivalent to what you're talking about. And then back to earlier where I mentioned Wednesday, Odin's Day, are the days that all these shootings have went on, and pardon me, and Cash Patel says, "I'll see you in Valhalla." To
How
an
weird is
to a
that?
to a Christian. What does that even mean, bro? Like, what? Please explain. You vowed or swore in rather on a Bhagavad Gita, and you're talking about Valhalla to a
Yeah.
Christian guy. To a Christian guy. So again, we're talking about the Babylonian religion that pervades all religions that they're really speaking to. So
Yeah.
again, with the esoteric symbolism that's going on.
Well, they say it to you with the symbolism. Why do you think Trump calls it the golden age? Right? Just go
Yeah.
look up any book on Atlantis. And, occultists, they say the golden age. I mean, they call Atlantis the golden age.
Mm-hmm.
So, what was that time period like? Well, it's everything we're seeing today, from a technological revolution, this alien psyop that's coming our way with the gods that are returning. And that's exactly what it was like in our ancient past. And they're trying to bring that back to earth, I think, to piss off God,
Yeah.
to trigger
No,
this battle of
100%.
Armageddon.
I mean, they're anti creation. That's why most of them, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not, okay, so I'm gonna go out on a limb here, because I'm saying this, I'm giving the disclaimer because I said this to my wife and she thought I just went too far. But all these tech guys are fucking gay, dude. They're
Yeah.
anti-creation. They're all gay, like fake Jew, atheists that are
Yeah.
anti-Christian. And what did Aleister Crowley do? He called the asshole, the booty hole, the Eye of Horus, because that's where you go and you put your life force energy to manifest what it is you want to manifest. Instead of creating life, you take that life force energy and create something in the manifested physical world. That is what they believe in doing. And I think it's kind of weird that they're all fucking also gay and into this
Well, I don't
stuff.
think it's necessarily weird. Like I said, if you go back to the foundation of all this, right? And I'm not saying that all gay people are, possessed by demons or anything like that.
No,
But
no.
at the highest levels, right? I believe these
Mm-hmm.
people are possessed by demons and they're anti-God and they want to act in an anti-God manner, right? By stopping, the creation of things. Or if they do
Yeah.
create it, it has to be artificial, like a robot or something like that. So, because I always thought about that, you know, pulling the tech guys, but let's just talk about the elite, right? It's like, why do all these rich people, powerful people, like, why are they always associated with pedophilia? It's not like you get so powerful that all of a sudden nothing else interests you and that's what you want to go to. That's like a
Mm-mm.
sickness, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that all goes back to the demons that are controlling these people.
Dude, blackmail is the cover story. Blackmail is the cover story. These people are not, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it's part of it, but it's also maybe the cover story. Maybe they're actually doing, maybe Frazzle Drip was real, right? I mean, that shit, right? Um, and just to disclaim another thing with that, if you are gay, a lot of gay people have noticed that the gay movement has been co-opted to push trans as a special, class even over gay people. They've pretty much used feminist movement to create the legalizing gay so that way they could then get the transgender shit out there to maybe even get the child molester shit out there with the protected special class. Remember that they tried to
Yeah.
do?
Well, I
That's
think,
what I'm kind of pointing out, that the people that perpetuated that movement, it's not gay is bad, but it's the
no.
people that are using those classes of people to push this kind of agenda, the sick, satanic one.
Yeah. So I have a uncle's gay who I love dearly, and he can't stand the modern LGBTQ movement because it
That's
has
what I was
nothing to
pointing out.
do with what they're originally trying for. And then
Exactly.
when you realize, and maybe we can talk about the symbology, how it just peaks its head and the source of all this stuff, I think this entire trans movement that we're seeing today, I think, Peter Thiel blew the whistle on it when he was being interviewed, and he says, that's not enough. That's pathetic. You're just cutting off your, sex organs. I want to replace your whole heart. I want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to replace your whole brain. And it's really just a stepping stone to this transhumanist agenda. And one more thing where these symbols just keep on popping up their head. I'm not sure if you remember, but remember when Target went through a lot of bullshit from people because they were promoting that LGBTQ clothing line or whatever, and people are coming and cutting up their Target cards and all that kind of stuff. Well,
Mm-hmm.
when you start looking at some of the designs, right, from the guy who created this line, I mean, stuff like Satan respects pronouns, and he had a goat god on it. In fact, it looked identical to the trans shooter who drew that image of him looking into the mirror with this goat god looking back at it, just like a Baphomet. What is that?
Yeah,
That's a
dude.
transhumanist goat
And it
with
said
female
like not
breasts.
today. It said like not today, Jesus, or something with like it said like the they took Christian slogans and inverted them into satanic ones, and there was like children's clothing. You got the Balenciaga scandal as well. It very clear what they're doing. But you know what this reminds me of? We did a series called Jesper in between us talking last, and it was Global Elite Satanic Pedophile Ring. And when I went on the Nephilim Death Squad, I talked a lot about kind of that because we talked about the Shoto de Amorar and how it's connected to the Dutro case and what I think it's connected. I haven't really heard anybody else say that, so I don't know. But from my research, seems like that's about right. But also, we went into, oh shit. Also, we went into, yeah, the Order of the Nine Angles and the 764 cult and these accelerationist cults that are being pushed forward. And when you look into, I forgot which one it was, because the smiley face killers, right? The way that people die from the smiley face killers. When you look into the order of the nine angles and the way that they think and talk about things, uh, it explains the smiley face mystery. So it seems like they're connected. And William Ramsey does a great job, but on this as well. We had him on and he talked about it, it was great. But essentially, they talk about you got to put somebody into a body of water, as a sacrifice to the god of water, right?
Mhm.
Which is Nimrod, right? Where we're talking, the fish god Nimrod really goes back to that. But anyway, so and the way that they described it was like they would come from a blind spot and you would walk up from the river up to, you'd look where the cameras are, and you could from the river kind of map out a blind spot from all the cameras in a place like a red light district or like a strip of bars near a body of river, water. That's where all these people have went missing and died from the smiley face killers. And the way that they do it is they kill them in a way where, because the accelerationist aspect of it is that you kill somebody that's out partying, they're out drinking, and then they die. And then when you see that they die, you're like, oh, they fell in the water because they were drunk. It's kind of their fault. That's the accelerationist aspect. They go and grab somebody that's doing some shit that's wrong, and then they think they're righting the world by doing some dark eugenics and killing people that are making decisions that they believe are bad. That's some wild shit right there, dude.
Yeah, and what's interesting, I mean, this is just based off the videos I've seen from that one girl who kind of broke all that stuff down with the Order Nine Angles and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like they were attacking, or not attacking, but trying to recruit incels.
Oh, yeah.
And who's a huge incel? It's almost like the Nick Fuentes operation was
Yeah,
a
dude.
honeypot for this in a certain way.
The
Um,
Groypers. The Groypers, yeah.
Seriously. I mean,
Mm-hmm. I know. Where does the Groyper, where does the word Groyper come from? Like, where did
well,
that start? I almost want to read, like, what is he doing there? You
well,
know?
check this out. So this is really interesting. That stupid frog or whatever that they use, and how
Yeah.
they then
Kekius
took,
Maximus.
right? That's a freaking Egyptian frog god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm not
Kekius
saying
Maximus.
that
That's what
they knew that,
Elon.
but who inspired it, right? These symbols pop up because we're inspired. These things put thoughts into our brains to create these things.
Yeah. It's dark magic with memes. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what we talked about, where if you're a person who is kind of easily manipulated and suggestible, those could activate you almost like Manchurian candidate style. If you were deep enough into SSRIs or whatever, something that we scroll past could be activating somebody else or drawing them into some forum that does activate them some other way. Like we don't. know how that shit works. To your point with that, with I think there's something there to that.
And what's crazy is, Peter Yarvin, the architect of dark enlightenment, this
Curtis
idea
Yarvin,
of
yeah,
accelerationism, but I'm saying it wrong, is baked into the core of that belief system. And they're trying to
hmm
do it more. So when you start seeing these groups that are starting to facilitate this stuff, and you're seeing that they're getting this programming from the dark internet that no one knows where it's coming from. I'm saying, who's really producing all these quote unquote lone gunmen that are going
right.
out and carrying out these horrific acts? And you almost wonder if there's intelligence wrapped all around that.
I think there definitely is because the ideology permeates everything, right? Because oh fuck, what did you just say? I just lost it. Shit. Go ahead. Say what you just said a little bit again, because
Um,
sorry,
I
my
just think
fault.
how intelligence has surrounded by all this accelerationism and
Yeah, I
creating
got
these
it.
patsies.
Yep. So remember earlier when I said that they want to make manifest what's hidden by the killing of the king rituals, like they did with JFK? This idea. Okay, so the same thing with 9/11. That's what the point of these high impact events are. Make manifest what's hidden. Well, the Order of the Nine Angles used a different wordage, but it's the same thing, which lays credence to your idea of like intelligence operation. Like that's what this is, with the ideology that happens to match perfectly to this Babylonian shit. But it's this idea of bring into the causal realm or kill somebody to bring the a causal realm here. So essentially, make manifest what's hidden. And that's the shit that Aleister Crowley was doing. I mean, all of it's influenced by the same thing. And that's what makes people kind of think, oh, well, they're all just, they must know each other. But no, it's just that this ideology is everywhere in different forms. You pick your poison, you'll find the same ideology in a different form to suck you into it.
Oh, and it goes all the way back to my opinion, before the flood, when these fallen gods came down here and they taught humanity everything we weren't supposed to know. I think there was some knowledge given to the original humans, but I think at some point these gods or whatever you will came down, and then with the help of the evil Enoch, people don't realize there's three different books of Enoch. Some of them are
Yeah.
separate, but
Yeah.
the seven sacred sciences come out of the Enoch 3. And then you then see this metastasize again after the flood with the Egyptian mysteries and Hermes the magician, right? There's a reason why,
Yeah.
um, at the top of the dollar bill, it's a pyramid. And I mean, not, I shouldn't say all, but a lot of these forms of mysticism, whether it's Kabbalah or whatever, they all have the same foundation that predates, I think, the flood and it's knowledge from these fallen gods.
Oh yeah. No, I think you're right, dude. And the Knights Templar, Knights of Hospitaller became the Knights of Malta, and it was the militia of the Pope. I just saw this from earlier. And then the Propaganda 2 Lodge in Italy was created by the CIA, which is the Masonic lodge involved in Gladio. So it all
Gladio
does
is
connect to
crazy.
each other with the, yeah, it's fucking crazy. But I was flipping through here because we were talking about kind of this, murder, kind of satanic, everything. The son of Sam. Okay. So they worship the star Sirius. So from what I've been reading, it's been pretty deep. Okay. So I haven't fully, this is my notes. So we'll get there. But yeah. So essentially, Sirius was kind of the dog headed god, right? That they represent or that they worshipped, right? And here it is. Calendars based on it in Egypt, on Sirius. The Orion belt, you know how everybody says how the pyramid lines up perfectly with the Orion's belt? Well, that's where the Sirius star is. It's actually the brightest star in the cosmos or in our solar system. And it's actually 35 times brighter than the sun. And so they call it the real sun, the actual omnipotent God that's hidden within the universe. They use as Sirius. So they had an opening in the pyramid that at a perfect time, in this little opening, that star by itself, singularly, would shine through right at the right moment while they're in, a ritual or whatever, and it would light up the temple in the pyramids, right? And that's serious little background with that, right? So then they would call August the dog days because that's when it's very hot, whatever. And somehow they related it to this. And so the reason why I say that is David Berkowitz, son of Sam, right? Serial murders involve the orders of a dog named Sam, right? So the dog, okay, and it occurred in the coming dog days of the summer in August. So these, that's when he killed those people. So then it gets, I got into a little bit with, Charles Manson might have actually known, um, who's Sharon Tate's husband? Noam Polanski or Rome Polanski. He made, uh, fuck, I keep blanking on everything. He made something's baby. What
Oh,
baby?
Rosemary's
Rosemary's
Baby.
Baby, which was all about like the Antichrist being born, right? And then he's involved in child molestation charges. He's selling kiddie porn and apparently bestiality porn. And Charles Manson was involved with this guy, okay? And then Sharon Tate, pregnant, gets murdered by these guys as some ritual murder. They all like this is some weird. Sharon Tate may have been involved with this shit too, because whenever you look at the actual, there's a book that I think everybody should look at because I think everybody's forgotten about it. Uh, and it's called. Let me find it because this book explains how Sharon Tate that night. They said that everybody was on drugs. They were like, these are people that they kind of got fucked up and they worship the same shit. Is kind of what it seems like. Like they were doing some weird things. And Bill Cooper kind of explained like, she may have been a willing participant upon the altar, but it doesn't mean it's not a tragedy, and I agree with that. But just like Charlie Kirk, possibly a willing participant upon the altar for a system of change. These Freemasons and other cults, but we'll just say Freemasons for lack of a better word. They swear a blood oath that they will kill themselves or each other or whatever for the cause, for the brotherhood, for the furtherance of the great work, right? So you got to keep that in mind when you're talking about these people.
Oh man, I know this one guy who I met at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna, who is a high level Freemason. I think like 32nd, if he was the 33rd, I don't think he's that powerful or anything like that. But no, he'll say, I'm like, he can't divulge any information about what they go
Mm-mm.
on, or they're like
Sworn to
generations
secrecy.
are cursed like 8, 9 times. And
Yeah,
he
and
actually, what's interesting is he works in the military industrial complex.
really.
And, no one's going to listen to this. So he was actually, according to him, he was on the team that came up with the term Wi-Fi and kind of developed its practical application for us consumer use, right? So before that, it was just like it's called 7 dash blah, 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 blah. And what they do is DARPA then creates these quasi public-private companies, probably with the funding of InQtel,
Mm-hmm.
and they roll it out to us. And these Masons, they're in on it. And you're right, Mason is I just use Masonic theater as just kind of like an umbrella to
Yeah.
incorporate everybody.
Yeah, I mean,
When
the
people says
Illuminati,
who's
yeah.
they, everybody.
Yeah, I mean, the Illuminati honestly was the best term for it because it's the sons of light in Latin, right? That is what we're talking about. This the light of what? Lucifer, the light bearer, right? And the reason why I think they demonized or made it so like corny to say Illuminati is because it really explained it the best. When you say Freemasons, people are like, okay, what is that? I mean, a builder, like who cares? But when you're talking like Illuminati, that shit has a little something to it. Not to mention the fact the same year, as our signing, it was created, and there's a lot of weirdness with that.
Well,
But
he
the
was
book,
Jesuit trained.
he was,
The
yeah,
guy who
he
created the
was.
Illuminati, Isaac Weishaupt, went to a Jesuit high school and college, I believe.
And I read that the whole story about like, the order getting shut down and everything was on purpose. That way he could spread the Brotherhood out to Freemasonry. I mean, that's where they went. Helena Blavatsky talks about how she didn't like the Freemasons after the Illuminati joined. They changed and it wasn't the same. Because she was kind of more of an anthroposophical kind of Rudolf Steiner type, but not to, I mean, she was still involved heavily with Luciferian shit, but I think she may not have been as dark as some of these motherfuckers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
But the
I
book,
think you
go
I
ahead.
think you see that these people are parts of various groups and they might kind of change their face a little bit,
Hmm.
but I think ultimately it's the same group. And I guess I'll point out like the Knights Templars, right? Um, Supposedly they got disabandoned, but I would just argue that the Rothschild Inc. that's now controlling the city of London is just an extension of the Knights Templars. In fact, you can constantly see them with Knights Templar symbolism as well. I mean, Rothschild means red shield. Well, what was the symbol of the Knights Templars? It was the red cross. The red shield protects the red cross. And you
Exactly.
just see this intermarrying of various bloodlines all coming together for a communal goal.
Exactly. And to your point, well, real quick, the Sharon Tate book, Painted Black, the book Painted Black, you can find the PDF version, page 115 through 116. As a matter of fact, I had to ask ChatGPT what it said because the PDF version skipped that page, probably because of how important it is. Go read that. It explains exactly what the house looked like whenever they went there for Sharon Tate's murder. There's also a book called The Manson File. Page 168 and 172 explain how Sharon Tate was involved with a church that now the Process Church, Final Judgment Church that Charles Manson was involved in. She also had ties to. So these people knew each other. He knew what house he went to that night, you know. And to the Knights Templar point, so Hiram Abiff in Freemasonry, he was killed by 3 ruffians after building the temple. Now, this is said by a Freemason. That actually represents Jacques de Molay, who was the leader of the Knights Templars. And on Friday the 13th, I can't remember what year, uh, the Pope and the King, I can't remember what king, they decided to essentially get all of them together and kill them. They turned against them because the Knights Templar owned the Pope, he owned the Vatican, and they owned the king and everything. So they were just sick of being under the thumb of these guys that owned them, right? The Rothschilds,
Mm.
essentially. And so they killed them. And that's when it became the Freemasons. And they used little symbolic stories like Hiram Abiff and King Solomon. Not to say that nothing happened back then, but that's really about Jacques de Molay, where they turned into Freemasonry. And there's a great book. I can't recall right now what it was. It's like the search for something, search for the lost key, maybe it was the lost keys of Freemasonry, where Manly P. Hall actually, who was the 33rd degree Freemason, and a renowned Freemason by all other Masons who say he knew everything. He says that they turned into the from the Knights Templars into the Masons, but it
Yeah.
is an ancient order that never has changed.
And interesting you bring up Jack Demolay. You know, who's the new hero that they're, rolling out in front of us? Thomas Massey. And you just do a quick Google search. He was groomed, and he's still a member of the organization Demolay International, which is a child Masonic organization. And, I just can't help but laugh. It's so famous,
Mhm.
you know, within the conspiracy sphere, that quote that says, "When the people need a hero, we shall supply one." And this new hero was literally groomed in a Masonic institution. And the entire mainstream alternative media, who's clearly captured, they
Mhm.
don't say anything about it. This is our
I
new
know.
hero. He's going to save us from the Federal Reserve, and replace it with what?
Exactly.
CBDC, some
The
type of
beats. Yep.
digital token.
Mhm.
No, it's crazy. I was like, sometimes I feel like pulling out my hair. I'm like, is this really?
I
And
know.
I made a joke the other day, and since everything's becoming tribal, even within the mainstream alternative media, and they've broken and they have alliances, and essentially it's come down to 3 choices. And I had 3 pictures, and one was, Tucker Carlson, CIA intelligence. I put American
Mhm.
CIA intelligence. I put Ben Shapiro as foreign intelligence, right? Mossad. And then at
Yeah.
the third, I put, Catboy intelligence, which is Nick Fuentes. And that's
Yeah.
essentially what we get to choose from as people. And I'm just like, am I taking crazy pills?
I know. Yeah, dude. You might be. No, dude, you're not. Thomas Massey, it's funny because everything he brings up gets shot down. Trump hates him, but then it's almost like a spiteful move that Trump ends up doing. Like okay, let me give it a for instance so it makes sense. The Smith-Mundt Act. Massey brought up how, Obama, we need to get rid of the repeal on the Smith-Mundt Act, right? Because in 2012, they repealed certain protections that kept them from propagandizing Americans, right? Well, Trump doesn't do that, but instead he decides to change the amendment in the Smith-Mundt Act, or at least last I heard they were starting to change it, to censor misinformation. So now we have propagandized news that will be censored from misinformation, and who the fuck decides that? So not only will you already get propaganda that might not be true, that for two different stories like Tylenol's a cure. No, Tylenol's not a cure. They haven't proven anything. Well, actually, the truth is that folate is really low in kids with autism, and it helps with the folate, right? And but nobody's saying that. Why is nobody saying the real information that would actually help us get what's going on? Instead, you have the right saying we have a cure, you have the left saying no, you don't, and nobody's saying the nuance of what's really happening. And
Just
so
don't
that's
take
kind of what
it.
I'm pointing out. Exactly. And so that's what I'm pointing out with Massey, where it's like, he brings that up, and then Trump's like, yeah, hey, good idea. I am going to mess with that act, but it's not going to be what you said. I'm going to do this. And to your
And
point, maybe he's almost like, hey, why don't we get this? Why don't we do this? And it's weird.
well, I'll tell you one thing I find interesting, and you know, I think all this fighting between either politicians or influencers, in a weird way, it just strengthens their influence within their base. They become more of a godlike figure, right? So if you're a Thomas Massey fan and Trump comes out and talks shit about Thomas Massey and all that type of stuff, you're gonna say, "See, the system's against him. He's our last hero." And on the other side, um, if Thomas Massey talks shit about Trump, then you have all the MAGA guys, and I think you even see
right.
that with all these political influencers. And
That is fucking good
this
point,
is
dude. That is true.
this is what's really interesting to me, and it has to be some type of magic trick because watching these influencers, especially the last 2 or 3 months, tear apart each other, right? Pointing out all the glaring holes in all their stories and stuff like that. Like if anyone with eyes to see or ears to hear, you quickly realize, listen, they're all BS. But like the
Hmm.
exact opposite has come to fruition. Their followers are more loyal than ever, which makes them more blind than ever. They go into their camps, which makes them be able to be manipulated more than ever. And I literally think that in all of this political fighting, whether it's politicians or these influencers, it's all part of the magic trick to jack our loosh and to control us,
Yes, sir. We will wage war by deception.
right?
And that's what we're watching, dude. I mean, yeah, because each one of them is captured, maybe even by the same people, like we're talking about,
Oh
but
yeah.
they have their own angle. You're exactly right, man. I'm super weary, of it's funny because doing this like podcasting and shit, you know, I like have thought about, oh, I should reach out to like this person or that person. And it's like, ah, I don't know. You know what I mean? Because like one, if they are carrot, like whatever, and
Mm.
two, you don't want to get on a radar if they did it. You know what I mean? So it's like a
Yeah.
weird thing
Yeah.
where you don't know. You don't want to hit up. You don't want to almost connect with certain people
Oh no,
that you
like I
don't.
said,
You know?
I joke. I'm like, if not that this would ever happen to me, but if Alex Jones ever hit me up to come on to
Yeah.
the show, how would I take that? Because at least within my core audience, then first
Yeah.
thing they would ever say is you shill, because I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that, what's it called, an intelligence operation. If I ever went on that show, I think I'd have to start off with, Alex, first and foremost, I think you are an intelligence operation. I don't support anything you do. No, let's just
Yeah.
start out. But yeah, it's like that. And the thing is
Mm-hmm.
this, it's the system doesn't care who you believe in, just that it's someone who is part of the system, right? Because then you still fall for the delusion of, government's going to solve everything. There's actually good people in it. And in reality, is not to sound black pilled, but when it comes to this earthly world, I think they're all in at a certain level. And, I just like, I won't repost stuff that Candace puts, although she might make a good point because she's totally bought and paid for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, without doubt, have you ever looked into her relationship with her husband? Have you ever heard about that
I
stuff?
saw some. I saw some of the stuff you said. Go ahead and throw it out there.
Yeah. So you start looking at it with all, let's just take it consideration how she's had an entire career in Career Inc. She got founded on a website where she was, applying to be a model or an actor. And then she makes this move to marry this, the son of Lord Farmer. His father's in the Permanent House of Lords, total reptilian. But there's all these
Yeah.
accusations that this is a sham marriage. I mean, they got
Wow.
married after 17 days. And by his own words, they never went on a formal date. There was no
Wow.
flirting. There was nothing. Um,
Wow.
and they
She
got
calls
married,
out her husband so much in her show, like me and my husband. She talks
right?
about how
She's just playing
strong
a
they
role.
are. Wow, man.
Yeah. And
I love
then,
it. You're good.
which would mean her conversion to Catholicism is fake too.
Oh, 100%.
And
I know
then,
she's too much like you it people that are like really into God, I feel like they usually take an approach. I mean, obviously there's like the crazy like, local evangelical Christians, whatever. But I'm saying people that are like generally like into it, they don't overplay the God wants us to do this and God wants us to do that. And this is what, and I just, just overplaying that is a little too much. It's about being a good person. It's like you're doing too much there. And I just don't, I automatically don't believe a motherfucker because now you're hiding something because I know you don't actually think that way. I like to think I'm a pretty spiritual person. I really am a generous, I try to be empathetic. I try to not be selfish, I try to really make other people happy over my own. I try to take care of myself so I can make them happy too, but you know what I'm saying. And I feel like I never have to say that. I'm only saying it now to point out I never like go out there and say, this is what, this is the Zen way to be. This is how you should, I don't know. I just think you're hiding something when you have to do that.
well, I think I'm with you. And I think any influence out there that's incorporating God and with a political agenda
Yeah.
is, he's a shill, regardless of what their take is. And there's a passage in the Old Testament that God says, "Cursed is the man who puts his faith in man." Right? I think, he's more black pilled about this earthly realm than I am. I say don't
Yeah,
believe
dude.
him. He's like, "No, you're cursed."
Yeah, dude.
But you kind of are, because ultimately, if you follow these people, we know where they're going to lead us. And like I said, I think while part of the agenda is control, part of the agenda is building out this system, this transhumanism. But I mean, ultimately, at its foundation, it's to get us to be anti-Christ. And that's an ideology. A lot of people don't realize that the antichrist isn't really mentioned in the book of Revelations. It's called the beast, right? That's the one who
Hmm.
comes. That's who people worship, is the beast. Antichrist is actually talked about earlier in the Gospels, and it's more of an ideology.
Yes.
And
We talked about this. I asked you this whenever we talked that one
yeah,
time. I said, "Do you think it's a person?" And it's funny you say, so I've done some research since then. And you're a biblical man. You know what I'm talking about whenever I bring this up, I'm sure. It says in Revelation that the red dragon gave power to the beast. And whenever you look at the red dragon, right? Like if you really think about it, so I was super into Dracula as a kid, right? I used to love reading the books. They called him the red dragon. That was his other name. And the queen, whenever she was alive, admitted, she said, I come from Muhammad, the house of David, and I'm related on another occasion. She said, I'm related to Vlad the Impaler, who's supposed to be Dracula, right? So the red dragon, and then of course they literally King Charles has like a red fucking, it looks like a red fucking dragon painting, you know what I mean, that he's made. And the Balfour Declaration is what created what I believe will be the beast system, which is an Israeli uh, technology controlled surveillance state. That even if they are the scapegoat to be the beast and it's controlled by the people above them, which we've already explained
mm,
plenty, they are the beast
yeah.
system. Like in my opinion, from what I can read, that seems like what it is.
Oh,
I plan on doing an Israel Antichrist kind of deep dive, but it's more from the lines of Unit 8200 going into, do you know about that? Like the venture capital thing, they pretty much were broke. Israel was broke, and they
okay.
invested the largest venture capitalist investment ever was put into their systems to create the technology we see today, which is why Larry Ellison has said our tech doesn't come from Silicon Valley. It all comes from Tel Aviv, which is
Mm,
because of this 8200, Unit 8200. Cash Patel's girlfriend is a part of Unit 8200. So there you go there. But this, and also, God damn it, who just gave a contract to 8200 today? Somebody just signed it over something to 8200 today. I think it was Trump. I'll have to look more into it. But they, that system is what's spread out to be Palantir and all, and all these different data collection companies and AI and whatnot. It's pretty crazy.
You know, it's really interesting, kind of like trying to figure out the relationship amongst all these different groups, the various intelligence agencies. I think what was very telling or interesting were those emails that got released between Ehud Barak and Epstein. And when they were talking about Peter Thiel, right? Because
Hmm.
clearly Peter Thiel at that point was part of the system. He was given all this tech from the CIA, but it was almost like they were courting them, right? Courting Peter Thiel to become part of this secret group, which, to your point, they probably exported all the technology that was once within DARPA and stuff like that over to that 8200 group.
Yeah.
And they're just developing even more. And back to the son of
I
the,
mean, yeah,
I
go ahead.
think Dracula in Greek means son of a dragon.
Yeah.
And
No, that's, yeah, Son of the Dragon.
yeah.
Yep.
And
And
where do you
that's
find
that.
this dragon mythology? Right? Well,
Where?
everywhere in our ancient past. To your
Mhm.
point in Revelations, what's it called? The dragon. These gods that came down here. One of them was called Seraphim, and that literally means serpent-like. Right? So they're just
Yeah.
paying
Yeah.
homage to these bloodlines.
Oh, for sure. Damn, that's crazy, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. And Promise scandal, all the way back in the day in the 80s, bro. Robert Maxwell, he was in charge of the whole Promise scandal. He put the back door in all this, I think it was police data website, like a database for international finance and police or whatever. All of it had back doors where Israel itself could access every country's like, information. And that
There's
has now been streamlined to everybody in the world.
Well, didn't Netanyahu come out recently and said there's like a piece of Israel inside every cell phone or something?
You say you're holding a phone, you're holding a piece of Israel.
Like,
Yeah.
what?
That's
That's
what I'm
crazy.
talking about right now, dude. Yes. And Robert Maxwell owned the publishing companies McGraw Hill, which was, I don't know about you, but that's all the textbooks I used as a kid
Yeah.
was those textbooks. And those textbooks were owned by a MI6 Mossad agent. And you're going to tell me we weren't propagating. So again, his story was told by the Zionists. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I heard
So
something
yeah.
interesting. I heard that I don't know if this is true, but I heard that um Maxwell's Mossad code name was Mega.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's
Mega for
why
the
they
mega group.
created the Mega group
Yep.
once he died. He took from his code name.
Yeah, and so let's get into that real quick. So
Yeah.
Meyer Lansky, who is a known Jewish mafia guy, you think Italian mafia, all the things they did, the Jewish mafia was one really running shit behind the scenes, right?
Yeah.
And so him, Lex Wexner, and Netanyahu, all part of the mega group. Epstein is their apprentice, and one of them, I think it was Meyer Lansky or Lex Wexner or Netanyahu or all three, two of them, I don't know, went and met with Bush after 9/11. And on October 7th, after this meeting, Bush announces we're going to go to war. We're going to go to war, I think, in Iraq or Afghanistan, one of the two. And that was October 7th. And then they call their October 7th their 9/11, which is just so funny to me how that works, as we uncover who's behind 9/11.
Oh yeah. It's absolutely insane how this is all going on.
Yeah.
And what I find interesting too, and this goes back to like for a group that what's their saying again? Through deception, we create war.
Yep. Through deception, we create war.
They're not creating that much deception anymore. Like
No,
it's
now they're just
almost
out
like
there.
they're laying out the breadcrumbs to lead back to them,
Yeah, because they want everybody to hate them so that Jews can
right?
be scarecrowed
And it's
back.
working. It's working.
Well,
There's a lot of people that, you hear this, and God bless his soul. I love, Sam Tripoli, Sammy T. But,
me too.
he says that, they just roll out the same playbook, the same psyop, right? They're not smart entities. And I would argue exactly the difference. I think these
Yeah.
entities are way smarter than us, at least in this form. And the
Hmm.
reason they use the same psyop is because the majority of people fall for it every single time.
Hmm.
And
It's
then when we
true.
stop falling for the psyop, what they do? Then they compromise the ZAG, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And now
The
now it's all controlled reactions.
Now
And
it's
and
all controlled reactions, all part of their plan, and they know exactly what they're doing.
play the right tune. I had this written down on the same piece of paper I read from earlier. Play the right tune and he will dance. Right? Right situation, you'll get the right reaction. The Hegelian dialectic. Um But yeah, man, that's exactly what it is, dude. It's fucking crazy. But yeah, Sam Tripoli, it's funny because he's like the internet got away from him, and it's like I don't know about that. Like, you know what I mean? It's
No,
kind of it's controlled chaos. And then
dude.
again with like the can't create is kind of where I think he was coming from with that point you just made. But it's
Mhm.
like they created the internet and they created AI. They're creating. What do you mean? Like they can. It's
These are
just a little bit
intelligent
of a
beings,
misform.
right? That came down here and taught us all these secrets. They got technological craft. How do you think they get down here? All the
Yeah.
reverse engineering. Oh, these things are genius.
Yeah. And it does worry me because I know for a fact, Sam. Well, I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure, confident, kind of, that there's nothing crazy going on there. But to your Tom Massey point, it's like that's like the main rider for Johnny. You know what I mean? He's like, dude, Massey. He's always bringing him up, and I'm like, I just think about you whenever he brought it because
Oh
I'm
no,
like,
I
yeah,
think
man. But
I think Sammy T's on the good fight, right? He
me
drives
too.
around
Yeah,
in Mitsubishi, and he's actually more honest than the majority of people out there,
yeah,
right?
I
And he
agree.
gets hammered by it all the time on Instagram or on X and stuff like that. When he actually, let's just take a look at the bigger scope. It's all these people working together. No, I think he's good, but yeah, you know,
Me too.
these Elohim, these fallen gods, you know, they managed to keep us in the dark for the past 6 to 7,000 years. You just think that they're willing to give up that control by giving us the internet, or they got away from us, or they're not that intelligent? No, they knew exactly what was going to happen. And to
Yeah.
me, when I just look at technology, like let's just take example of the phone. Oh, so cool. We can text and we can upload photos of our lives, and I can upload images and videos to get out there. But at the end of the day, what is it? It's one, it's tracking you wherever you go, and it's propaganda 24/7. It completely
Hmm.
revolutionized the way we take in propaganda. And it was no longer, for an hour a day when we got home and watched the nightly news or when we picked up the newspaper. They are constantly bombarding us
And
with
it's
all types of
customized.
24/7, right? I mean, to me, like I said, don't pay attention to what the talking heads say during it. Just see what happens as a result to it. And I promise you that was the intended consequences.
Oh yeah, 100%. And now it's customized. The propaganda gets customized to each person to make sure that they're just that more in line. And dude, you just gave me a slight epiphany. We could probably end here in a second, but apocalypse means the great awakening. And the beast takes over. We're talking about the beast systems during the great awakening. It seems like we are going through some kind of great awakening right now. They kept us in the dark for 6,000 years to your point, and now we get to know the great unveiling is going on. But what happens after the great unveiling? During the great unveiling, we get ushered into the beast system, right? That's the first thing. And that's what I think we kind of see it unfold at the moment. I don't know. I mean, you just kind of put that in my head there whenever you said that. It's like, yeah,
Oh,
maybe it is for a reason.
Oh, dude, I think it's, let me tell you something. When you take a look at what's going on geopolitically with these wars, we're at a point, let's just take, Ukraine and Russia. And let's not mistake, this is a proxy war. We're in it.
Oh, yeah.
And we're now telling them to go shoot down Russian drones or Russian airplanes that cross over into NATO territory. You got Russian officials talking about if you do this again, this is going to start World War III. Let's take a look at what's going on in Israel and genocide of the people in Gaza. You have them bombing, 6 countries in something like 72 hours. You talk about this ongoing war with Iran. And then when you add on to, China now coming and talking about how they're going to enter Taiwan, and you
And
have three
Taiwan's
major,
pamphlets, they got
yeah, you
pamphlets
got
saying to
three major
prepare.
pressure points that
Oh, yeah.
when they're all going, guess what? You're going to see this World War III collapse. I think you're then going to see a collapse of the entire system, maybe a wiping out 4 or 5 billion people, to fulfill the prophecy of the Georgia Guidestones. And then you're going to see this technological revolution that they've been planting the seeds for,
Oh, yeah.
for the past 30 or 40 years. And that's when you're going to see this convergence of AI, quantum, and, wearable tech being implanted into us. And to me, it's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we were gonna actually. It's funny. I'm so glad you just did that. We were gonna take this angle today as well because Peter Hegseth just, unprecedented hundreds of generals brought to a meeting. He won't let the press in unless they only post or publish what he says. So they're controlling the freedom of press. You have the freedom of speech, freedom of press, and freedom of religion all being attacked right now because they want to keep us from a growing anti-war sentiment from growing, right? Because I do think, like you said, we're headed towards a war. And Alex Karp, the owner of Palantir, the guy who's doing all the war shit, right? Peter Thiel and him, he said we're going to be on a three-front war with Iran, China, and Russia a year ago. He said that. We're about there, dude. I mean, a year ago you wouldn't have thought he was right, but now it's like, oh shit, he's in the know. And this guy, I don't know if you know this, he said that he wants to. It's just funny. I love telling everybody this. He said most people have a higher purpose. I have a lower purpose. My lower purpose is to take fentanyl laced drones and just spray people with it that piss me off pretty much. And I'm like, wow, there we go. That's now we're in the head of this psychopath. And then his partner is the guy who takes young blood and injects himself and talks about the Antichrist. Dude, where are we right now? I just need to know. Like,
No, it's
crazy.
wild. And to think that someone like Peter Thiel could, masquerade as a libertarian while he was, building out the surveillance structure for the deep state. And I mean,
Yeah.
I fell for it too. But, you said something interesting. We got into the mind of this psychopath. And I think ultimately we're getting into the mind of as a demon.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Who
you
thinks of
had
that? Who
you
thinks
had
of that?
Les Wexner. He's talked about and he's used the
Yeah, a
word
debunk.
for a Yiddish demon on its constant battle between him and that.
Hmm.
So that's what I'm saying. I mean, that's where I think the source of all this happens is,
Keep
in this
it.
spiritual realm with these gods. And what's interesting, and you might want to read this at some point,
Hmm.
is Psalms 82.
Yeah.
And that's in the Old Testament. And essentially what it is it's, the God Most High actually judging these
Hmm.
various other gods that are ruling over us and for
Oh,
all the
really?
things that they did to humanity. So there you have it, right? You have this acknowledgement of that these pagan belief system, their gods are real, and that they're waging war against humanity, and you kind of see that, right? I go back to that Game of War or the God of War show and just apply that to our world.
Wow. He said, God standeth in the congregation of the mighty. He judgeth among the gods, plural. How long will ye judge unjustly and accept the persons of the wicked? Defend the poor and fatherless, do justice to the afflicted and needy, deliver the poor and needy. So essentially, all these are all the things that they're accused of.
And if you read at the very bottom, read what it says. He says, "You are gods, right? And you're
I
going to
have
die like
said,
men."
ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High, but ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. Arise, like one of the princes, the Prince of Light, like Lucifer. I mean, wow, dude, this is deep.
Yeah.
Arise, O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nations. Now, who's he talking about there? What does he mean by that?
What,
Who's
inherit all
inherit?
nations?
They know not, neither will they understand. They walk on darkness. All the foundations of earth are out of course. I have said, ye are gods, and all of you are children of the Most High. But ye shall die like men, and fall like one of the princes. O God, judge the earth, for thou shalt inherit all nation.
So what that's pointing reference to is Deuteronomy 32. So essentially what happened according to the Old Testament, this is way before the Abrahamic phase, when they build the Tower of Babel and they all spoke the same language and they all kind of lived in the same area. And there's a lot of people
Hmm.
that believe the Tower of Babel was some type of portal that could actually enter the heavens or enter hell, and God destroyed it. And at that point, according to the Bible, God was done with humans as a whole. He's like, screw
Yeah.
you guys. How many times are you going to turn away from me? So I'm going to create nations and put a God to rule over each one of you. And these are these
Mm.
fallen gods that he's judging in Psalms 82. Now, he always wanted to bring humanity back into the fold. That's the one thing, if you read the Old Testament, the New, every time that humanity, and this is why Israel was created, this is before Israel was created, there was always a plan to bring them back into the fold. And the plan to bring humans back into the fold after Deuteronomy 32, when he made a God rule over each one of them, and these tribes were forced to, worship these gods, was through Messiah. So in Deuteronomy 32, he creates the nations, but he keeps one nation for himself, and that's
Mm.
Israel. And the reason why he kept Israel at the time was to produce the Messiah. And once that happens, then our part as, believers in the Most High or followers of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
Messiah, or just his message of love your neighbor and
Hmm.
asking for forgiveness. We're supposed to preach that to the various nations that were once under control of these gods. And
Ah,
then Jesus will inherit the nations again at the end of that.
I see. And it was written from I guess what I was saying earlier, like who's writing it? I guess it was written, it says the Psalm of Asaph. So he was the one talking, or was it God talking? I guess that's what I
Well,
was
I think the
curious about.
Psalms come from David. Maybe Asaph
Mhm.
is his Hebrew name. But
Yeah.
like I said,
He was a
oh, he was a
musician who
musician.
served as the chief musician of King David's court. So yeah, I mean, yeah, he wrote seer and prophet. Okay, so that's why he did see and prophesize that this was
Yeah,
said.
yeah.
Okay,
And that's
okay,
the thing
okay,
is throughout
okay. That's what I was trying
history,
to get down to.
yeah, you have throughout history, and I've seen it today. Listen, I know people that, and I've seen this actually happen in real life, where there's people with this spiritual connection that can just communicate with it. They see things differently. They hear things differently. Um, you know, if you don't know how to deal with this, they might call you, schizophrenic, but you're not. You're not crazy at all.
Right.
You just have a gift, and it's usually God ordained. Sometimes it's drug induced. There's certain drugs that you can take, like meth and DMT or whatever it is, that then open up channels. But there's seers out there that just have this divine knowledge.
Yeah, that's
That
crazy, dude. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure that it used to be more prevalent before too,
Yeah, yeah.
back in the
I
day.
also want to say, Christians might call me a heretic for this, but that means I might be onto something. Now, um, the Bible has been manipulated.
Oh
Not
yeah, definitely.
everything is 100%. Just look at the 100 different translations we have. And then when you realize what we're getting is a translation of a translation of a translation. And we don't even know if those original translations are the original Bible or the, language in which it was written. I
No,
mean, who knows
exactly.
what they really have in that Vatican library, hidden from us.
Yeah, exactly. And even something simple like, in the beginning when Eve said she had Cain with the help of the Lord, but then she just has Abel and it says then she just gave birth to Abel. It doesn't say anything about with the help of the Lord. The Bible doesn't just put shit in there without, what did it originally say, right? What was the original text? Because I've read that it was plural gods and lords, meant gods, like plural, like she had Cain through them. So then that leads into the seed wars and the enmity that God says he will put in between the two seeds. And then
Genesis
after that,
3:15, yeah.
and then who keeps Adamites going? It's Seth because Abel dies, right? So that's some crazy shit that maybe is exactly what we've been talking about.
Yeah, and that's the one thing it's hard to like, especially when you first start reading it, like at least for me. And I was very hesitant at first because I just associated it all with, a control structure. And I still view religion as a control structure.
Yeah.
But when you start reading the Bible, at least the Old Testament, and they're like, this person begot this person begot this person, to a new reader, a layman, you think, oh, this is lame. Like,
Yeah.
what do I care? But
Yeah.
that's the whole crux of the matter, right?
It
It's
is.
really this battle that's been going on ever since these watchers came down and they changed our genetics. And, there's been this battle between two different seeds, the
Seed
genealogy
Wars.
of Adam, which is created by God, or the genealogy that's created by these
The
fallen
serpent.
gods through
Yeah.
the mating of women.
Yep.
And
The
it's
serpent.
another
The red
interesting thing.
dragon.
Yeah, the dragon, right? And you see that in
Hmm.
Revelations.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing is there's a passage in the sixth day of Genesis where it says, let us make them in our image, right? And people don't
Yep.
know what to do with that.
I know.
And, so was there a group of Elohim that, kind of seeded, of original people? Because I think the people created on day 6 are different than Adam and Eve.
I see. Yeah. Yeah. And then there are other people whenever King gets like put out, there's other people that he has to, and he doesn't
Exactly.
want to go, he doesn't even want to go near them.
Who's he afraid of?
Right? He's terrified, right? And so, but he's also of the same blood, right? So that's the weird part, but he's never been exposed to them or at least had to live with them, right? So then there's the difference there, I would assume. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's very crazy, dude. That's some deep shit, bro. I think we got down to the a little bit of the bottom of that. That's
I know
wild,
it's
man. Hey, I
wild.
love having you on, Ben, dude. We
Hey,
did
thanks for
two
having me on.
hours,
And
I think.
also, so your listeners know you're coming on
Yeah.
my show. I think we're recording it on the 9th, was it? or the 8th?
The 8th, yeah.
Perfect. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
8/8, baby. Day after
Hey,
October 7th. We're gonna see if any wild shit goes on then. That seems
I
to
think
be
it
the
will.
time. Yeah, no shit. We'll see what happens. But yeah, dude, it's always a pleasure, dude. Real excited to have you on. I think we did 2 hours, so that's fucking dope. I could just talk forever with you, so that's
I know.
awesome.
That's what I'm saying. Like, we have some great conversations and they just flow, right? Because I
Yeah,
think we're on the same wavelength and we kind
definitely.
of understand what's going on and we don't, follow the crowd. And
Nah,
that's how
man.
you know you're onto it.
Yeah, I gotta stay objective. Yeah, man. If you ever come out this way, dude, we'll have to kick it.
100%, sir.
It's same for if I come out there. But yeah, I'll see you next time, man.
Sounds good.
All right, thank you. All right, this has been another episode of 6G Agenda. Hopefully you guys like that, man. What do you think, Justin?
That was
What do
good
you think of
shit.
all that shit?
Every time Ben comes on, it's a good ass time, dude. Even though
Dude, that was
I'm off cam for these, but it's a good time to just hear you guys talk. You guys get
yeah,
excited as fuck.
dude. I mean, we are on the same wavelength
Yeah,
as he
man,
said at the end, dude. I mean, he's right, man.
for sure.
It's real cool to pick somebody's brain that has some knowledge that I don't. You kind of fit the spaces together, and boom, you got a full picture.
Yep.
So that's fun. But yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. A special 2 hour drop to make up for that 30-minute episode last time. Sorry about that, guys. But hey, go check out the Patreon episode, man. I'm telling you, we went into the real crux of the show was in the Patreon. I'll tell you that right now. We went deep after that 30 minutes.
I agree.
That was kind of the warm up. So, but yeah, man, we'll be back for the silent weapons. Or maybe we just released it, depending on what day it is. So we'll see. I don't know when we're releasing this one. It'll either be right before or right after. So, but yeah, we'll see you all next time. And go check out the description. We got our Buy Me a Coffee, Venmo. We might be taking down the Venmo because I don't trust PayPal. Maybe switch to Zelle or something. Like, I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, I talk about the PayPal mafia all the fucking time, like
Yeah.
Peter Thiel and shit. It's like, what am I thinking? And then I saw somebody post about how they couldn't get their money out of there. I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, it might
you know?
be fucked. We might need to switch it up.
Yeah, so hit up the links down below. You can find the Patreon. All the links are there. So we'll see you all next time.